Welcome to Legacy Engineered, the show where smart structure meets lasting success. Join Scott Arden, Chairman and CEO of Controllers Limited, as he sits down with business leaders, top entrepreneurs, and experts to uncover the strategies, stories, and structures that build lasting legacies. And now, here's your host, Scott Arden.
Welcome back to Legacy Engineered, the podcast where we sit down with entrepreneurs, leaders, visionaries, and builders to talk about what it really takes to create lasting impact, protect what you've built, and engineer a legacy that outlives you. Today's guest is someone whose story is built around discipline, grit, reinvention, and resilience. Joey Gilbert is a former nationally ranked boxer turned attorney whose path has taken him from championship boxing rings to high-stakes courtrooms. Born in Chicago and raised in Sparks, Nevada, Joey became a three-time national boxing champion while attending the University of Nevada, and later competed professionally with impressive 21-3 record, including 16 knockouts. After retiring from professional boxing, Joey transitioned into law, where he now represents individuals navigating some of the most difficult moments in their lives, focusing on advocacy, trust, and helping people find clarity through chaos. Joey, welcome to Legacy Engineered.
Thanks, Scott. It's an honor to be here. Appreciate you reaching out. I'm excited.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, we've known each other for several years and have worked together. I know I've sent you some business and all that good stuff, so I appreciate you being here on my show.
Absolutely, man. And vice versa. It's good to work together. Good to have good people to send business back and forth to.
100%, 100%. So I got to ask you, you've gone from elite athlete to professional boxer to attorney. Looking back now, what do you think those different chapters were preparing you for?
Oh man, just the chaos that is this life right now, this world that we live in, where things are ever changing, and it's like the ultimate. I think it was the Mike Tyson quote that everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face, and it's kind of a great metaphor for life, And everyone, we have our goals, we have our things that we're trying to hit or trying to achieve, and then what life happens. I was going to say a bad swear word, but stuff happens, right? And so then you just kind of got to, next thing you know, you're adjusting, you're making those fine-tuned adjustments. And that's kind of like what I look at with life. I mean, I take that from the boxing ring. That's probably the best way to look at things. When you're a boxer, you'll go to a 12, 16-week training camp and you'll drill with a certain way, fight a certain way. And I can't tell you how many times, second round, third round, coach says, remember everything we learned? Screw it. It's out the door. We're doing this, because you got to make changes in real time. It ain't working. And that's right. Life, man. You can have, something set out. You're at this job or you're doing whatever and you're just grinding out and it just doesn't work the way it's supposed to. And you got to, as you said, reinvent yourself, use that discipline and grit, turn things around and get down the road. Life doesn't care. Life is a cruel thing. So you can sit there and bitch about it or cry about it and think that, this poor me. Or you could just put your chin down and get back in the fight. And, that's that old Stallone and Muhammad Ali quote, it doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down or how hard you get knocked down. It's all about getting back up. So those are metaphors I use every single day in the courtroom, in the boardroom, anywhere I'm at. Things never really go the way they're supposed to. And then it's just time to figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. So growing up in Sparks, Nevada, what shaped your mentality early on? Were you always naturally competitive?
No, not at all. I was a smart mouth kid from Chicago that had an accent that got picked on by these Nevada boys. And I got bullied and beat up all the way through grade school and high school at Bishop Manogue. And actually at the university, the fraternity house, Sigma Alpha Epsilon, I decided, because I met some guys that were Pikes, that said, hey, you should go on the boxing team. So I walked on the boxing team at 19 years old, having never really been in a fight or scrap before. And I always tell people, it's like that movie, Good Will Hunting. It's just something I could do. I just saw it. I could understand the point system very importantly. And I understood, being first and overwhelming your opponent. And then again, you either got a chin or you don't. You know a little bit about the fight game. You can't teach certain things, and you either can take a shot or you can't. And I'm paying for it a little now in life. Broken. I've got 14 fractures to my nose, 4 septioplasties, stitches all over my face, and there's definitely some things hanging around from my boxing days. But you got a chin, and so I was just able to use the grit and fight of me, just the perspective I've always had, perseverance to turn it into an awesome experience, going through college undefeated as a fighter, the amateurs undefeated, won the Golden Gloves. And then, my father I actually enlisted, went in the Air National Guard, got into law school. And then after my first year, actually I got back from basic training. I told my dad, hey, I think I want to fight professionally. He said, absolutely not. You're going to law school. That's what you went to the air, military for. So you're going to law school. And if you still want to do it, then train while you're in law school and fight when you get done. So as my father's son, I trained for 3 years while I was in law school. And then as soon as I got out of law school, although I had 2 fights while I was in law school, and I just, took that same mentality of just never give up and, always something to learn. I think the one thing I could say, though, Scott, that's important is I love learning. I pride myself in coachability. And I always feel like if you think that you can't learn something or you're too cool or know too much, then you're really missing out, because every day I learned something from mentors and folks in business. And in boxing, I was just a sponge. I just took it all in and applied it, and for myself, and it worked.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. I love to hear those stories, and like I said, it's just to watch or just hear about the journey, it's really cool.
Yeah, dude, it was a lot of fun. And one thing I always say is I got to parlay that into some cool things. You mentioned the Contender. I got on the show with Sylvester Stallone on NBC, and then afterwards I got invited to do USO tours. So I got to go visit our troops overseas, twice to Afghanistan, once to Iraq. It was just unbelievable, a way to serve, and just to be there for our troops, men and women in uniform. And that was probably, I always tell everybody, I got to do some cool things, private jets with Stallone, private parties, amazing things, clubs. But if I had to say one thing that was the coolest of being able to be in a capacity where you're well known and have a little bit of celebrity, it was those USO trips, being in Afghanistan, Kirkuk, Afghanistan, with our troops over Christmas and New Year's. I'll never forget those things, and that was probably the funnest part of that little walking time in celebrity status.
That's awesome. Yeah, not most people get to experience things like that, so that's rock on, brother.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
So you competed at an incredibly high level professionally. What do people misunderstand about what it really takes to perform at that level consistently?
I think what people maybe not don't understand is just the commitment it takes. I mean, your life is spent training. I mean, I wake up and train, and it's just that's what it's a lifestyle. It becomes a lifestyle. It's your profession. And so everything, and I was big on saying that, every little thing can have an impact. So it's my diet, maybe it's a 2 or 3% bump on my, my cardio, or on my, being able to maintain my endurance. And then your sleep, massage, stretching, nutrition, everything like that. Of course, your training. And then you start hearing stuff like, they say that 98% of professional athletes are overtrained. So it's trying to get that comfortable, medium where you feel good. But when you're stressed, or you're thinking about the nerves, I was going to say, when you've got nerves going through you because you got a big match coming up, the only place you feel relaxed at is the gym. So that's why I think professional athletes have such a tendency to overtrain, because you want to just keep mastering your craft. And so from waking up to go on an empty run, on a black cup of coffee, empty run, back stretch, have my first meal, then it was out the door for a first training session, back in and rest, eat lunch. Then it was out the door for training session number 2. Then it was back, rest, eat lunch, a little stretching, whatnot, massage, and then it was back to the I'd always finish my evening or finish my day with a beach run every night, which was anywhere from 6 to 9 miles. And that was after a full day of training. And that was between about 8 and 9 p.m. And then I'm hitting the rack about 10 a.m. up at 7. That was every day, 5 days a week. And then we'd spar. Our longest sparring was on Saturdays. So Saturday was a sparring day. It really was a 6 day a week job, nonstop, 24/7, almost year round. Because once you're coming up, you're just getting ready for the next camp, getting ready for the next camp. So you'd have a fight, take 10 days, 2 weeks off. I mean, I was back in the gym sometimes on Monday, knocked a guy out. I'll never forget. I stopped Jimmy Lang at the Patriot Center out in Fairfax, Virginia. I stopped him in the 3rd round, and I was in the gym Monday morning because I just was that hungry and wanting to go. So that level is just it's a different breed. I got to go to 2006, 2007 ESPY Awards. I was a breakout athlete of the year that year. And I'll never forget sitting in the green room with that Sean Alexander. He was the MVP of the NFL that year. And me being a complete goofball, I said, like, oh yeah, what do you do? And he was like, I said, what position? He's like, I'm the running back. He was the leading rusher of the NFL that year, MVP of the NFL that year. And I'm asking him who he is and what position he plays. And then he turns around and says to me, man, I followed you on the Contender, man. It's awesome. And it was just like so surreal for me. But then just hearing his training, we sat back there, talking. And their training regimen, it reminded me of mine. Up, stretching, workout, food, stretching, workout, food, stretching, workout, food, and then some recovery at night and back to bed.
No, that's discipline,
So,
man.
that was awesome, though. It was a lot of fun.
So transitioning from professional sports into law is a major shift. What was the hardest part of reinventing yourself after boxing?
Well, as I said, hardest part of reinventing myself after boxing was not being able to punch someone in the face that you don't agree with. That's not really that's frowned upon in my new line of work. But I would just say the thing that was toughest is going from a situation where you're the king of your world. Everything kind of revolves around you. Your training, your recovery, massage every day. Truly, the thing that's most important is getting the most out of you. So your rest, your recovery, your training takes precedence. Now in the real world, no one gives a damn. No one cares.
Right.
So it was all about conforming to a new timeline. For me, I'd get up and train when I felt rested. Now I'm up hitting the gym early so I can get suited and booted out the door for work. Then there's a schedule all day, trying to grab something to eat, just like you, man. We're trying to grab a bite to eat before our next call, before our next client. I miss it. I get home at 7:00. I haven't eaten. I'm ready to pass out. My daughter looks at me like, what's going on? And it's just a matter of priorities change. The fun level changes. Plus, there was just nothing like being a pro athlete. It's just such a different feeling. And now, you're just doing what everyone else does. So just the excitement's really not there. Although you can have some big wins for clients, you can have some big wins in business, but the excitement and the pressure, which I love, is missing. So
yeah, absolutely.
Just grind on.
There you go. Yeah. So do you see similarities between the ring and the courtroom when it comes to strategy, confidence, and handling pressure?
Oh, absolutely. The one thing I'll say is, especially as a criminal defense attorney, you don't know what's good. Some days, sure, we all plan, just like, planning for this podcast or planning for a meeting with a client, you got your notes out, but then someone could come in and they can go totally off the road. It's just like you show up to court with a plan and your client does whatever. And now you're facing hostile, fire from a judge, from a prosecutor, from witnesses, and you have to adapt. I think it's almost identical to boxing. I think it's what's actually made me good in my new line of work, is that nothing really phases me. I don't get jammed up, unless the judge or the witness is going to jump out of the witness stand and charge me. I'm good.
Right.
Nothing in that courtroom is going to get me too worried. So it's like I said, though, you got to plan for the unexpected, and you got to be ready to make a move, and to change your strategy and adapt at almost any time.
Absolutely. That's not only in life, in business, in boxing. It's I think that's just life in general, as you said, right?
Yeah.
So you now work with people during some of the hardest moments of their lives.
Yeah.
How has that shaped the way you view leadership and responsibility?
Well, that's a good question. Look, I think it's always important to be honest and to tell the truth, even when it's tough. And that's kind of like anybody that knows me, that's probably my biggest strength and sometimes can be my biggest weakness, because I'm going to speak my mind. I wear my heart on my sleeve. I don't pull punches, and I've had clients say to me before, like, man, I'm so glad I'm sitting here with you because the last 3 guys I did said this, this, and this. And I said, no, so I like to be painfully honest, brutally honest, because in my line of work, that's what my clients are paying me to do. And so I think that also comes with, you got to, I also live my life a certain way. I don't think, as a lawyer, you'll see attorneys' cards. They say attorneys and counselors at law.
Mhm.
And I take that counselor portion of it very seriously. I feel like, how can I advise these young men, young women, anybody that's got something going on, if I'm not living, my best life, if I'm not leading by example? So, I mean, I don't drink, I don't eat bad. I think it's very, you know, kind of just uncanny in a way if you're preaching to someone, but you don't live that same lifestyle. So for me, it's leading by example, always telling the truth, having those tough conversations, keeping your word, honoring your word, and just being about, what's real, being about the truth. So that's how I do it from a leadership perspective. I think that, leadership is action, not a position. And so you got to act, you got to be a leader, and to be a leader, you got to act like a leader and demonstrate yourself as just above the grain.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So when you think about building something lasting, whether in business, family, or community, what do you think matters most?
I think the foundation, I think that, that you got to have a good foundation that you're building off of. So from me having a military background, I was in the, Air National Guard through the Air Force. Obviously, I was an athlete. It all comes down to those, the mechanics, and to also, basically, when I say foundation, I mean like what you've learned from the very beginning, making sure that those skills, you've mastered your skills, you're the best in your area, that you're not, in there guessing. And so I think that, being able to have a legacy is about preparing to build on something. And so you got to have that good foundation. And then it's obviously working with great people, surrounding yourself with people better than you, smarter than you, at all times. I mean, I don't pretend to know the most about anything, but I got a guy who does for sure. I got Scott Arden, I got, other lawyers for different things. So if it comes down to, you want to build a legacy, don't be some jackass and just, hope it's going to turn out. Put the right resources in place, do the due diligence, spend the money, and get it done right. Otherwise, you never know. And so I always tell people, seek out the best. That's what I did as a fighter. I sought out the best trainer. I actually looked up trainer of the year for 2005, found who that was, contacted him. He said, I'm not looking to train anybody new, but if you want to come out to Florida, I'll be happy to work with you. My butt was on the next plane out to Tampa. I spent 6 years there. So same thing, when I was trying to get better in business and in coaching in my consulting company, I hired Tony Robbins. I hired him both as a coach. I've done every Tony Robbins event that he has, including his Mastery University, his Speakers Boot Camp. So I gave myself the tools to succeed. And now, as I'm trying to build as a businessman and make sure it can't be taken from me, I go and find my boy Scott Arden and I say, get my stuff in line for me and my daughter so I don't have to worry about her. And I finally feel like I'm in a place after quite some time that I can take a breath. Now I'm just in earn mode. Now it's just about get that money and build the business, because I got to have stuff to sock away with you.
Yep. There you go. There you go. Well, I know we were talking priors, but I got to ask, what's next for Joey? Can we talk about that or no?
Yeah, I
Not
mean,
yet.
look, I again, like I said, I wear my heart on my sleeve. I think it's very important to speak your truth and to put out there, because the universe is a funny thing. Us just talking about this right now will hold me accountable. The universe will conspire with me along with our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And for me, it's all about putting it out there, putting it out to the universe so that energy can surround me. And I've got big plans. I want to run for governor in 2030. If we have everything lined out the way that we're talking about lining it out, that's on there. I've got another company right now that does hormone replacement therapy, medical weight loss, and peptides. I'm planning on selling that. I just told my partners the other day, look, we're either winding this company down in 36 days, or we're selling it for $250 million in 36 months. What do you want to do? Which route do you want to take? And so I'm very big on speaking the truth and putting it out there. But my two priorities right now are my daughter. She's in her just finished her junior year. She'll be a senior. Delivering this kid to the next level. She's been gone to state for tennis and wrestling. She tells me now she wants to fight in the UFC. So dad's going to get her every resource she needs to do that. My first priority is to see her to her next, like I said, to her next path. While I build up my businesses to a point where I hopefully can exit them in the next 18 to 24 months by putting great people in place. And then I'm gonna go take down this governor, this run. And hopefully in January of 31, we're back on your podcast talking about what we're going to do for the next 4 years.
Absolutely. I'll definitely have you back on. You got my support, brother. So absolutely. So this is legacy engineered, and we ask every question. We ask this question to every guest before we wrap up. is, and I love what you were saying prior to that about your daughter and what she wants to do. But the real question that I want to ask you is, what does legacy mean to you personally at this stage in your life?
Oh man, legacy means it's something that people just can talk about, be about, that my family is set, that other generations look back and say, Joey Gilbert, man, that dude was the real deal because I left something. I left footprints in the sand. I talk about that all the time. I want to be remembered for being straightforward, for being, hard up, the first guy to get into the mix. And that's always been, that's me in a nutshell. When there's action happening, you're not going to find me in the back. You're not going to find me to the side. You're going to find me up in front, probably kicking whoever thinks they're in charge out of charge and taking over, because I ain't going to wait for them to tell me what to do. So it's about taking action and being first, just like I was in the ring.
There you go. And I've seen that personally in action, which is awesome. And I know that's exactly who you are. So
yes, sir.
Oh, cool. Well, Joey, this was a fantastic conversation. Your story is such a strong example of reinvention, discipline, and learning how to channel adversity into purpose. From competing on world stage in boxing to advocating for people in the courtroom, you've built a career around resilience and standing firm under pressure. And I think a lot of people are going to connect with that. So thank you for joining us. And, always a pleasure. Always a great speaking to you, man. And I appreciate you being on.
Thanks for having me on Legacy Engineer, and I look forward to returning in the future with some good news.
Absolutely.
Right on, brother.
Thanks for listening to Legacy Engineered. For more episodes and to connect with Scott and the team at Controllers Limited, visit controllersltd.com. You can also follow Scott on Instagram and LinkedIn and start building your legacy with confidence today.